Hey guys, welcome to Survival Vietnamese, where we talk about Vietnamese language, Vietnamese culture, and Vietnamese everything. So today I have a very, very special guest, my dear friend, and I would call you my teacher as well. Here with us today is Bhante Sanathavihari. Thank you for joining us, Bhante.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Chris.
You're in Vietnam right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's about to be maybe like 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, actually, it's already been 2 months, yeah.
Let's talk about your background first for people who don't know who Bhante Sanathavihari is. Let me give the context of how I know you first.
Yeah, it's a good story.
So I taught high school in Los Angeles for about 7 years. And when I was teaching social studies there in LA, I taught an anthropology class, and we got to a part about Buddhism. And during this time, I wouldn't say that I was very religious. I was very curious about Buddhism, and as a Vietnamese person, it was always on the periphery. I mean, I was raised Catholic, but we always had people who married in, and relatives who were practicing Buddhists. But growing up, like, I didn't know much about it, and yet I was teaching it at that time, and I was just teaching like what was in the teacher's book. And then your sister was in my class, and then she raised her hand and said, "My brother's a monk."
You're like, what?
Yeah, so like the school is mostly Latino, and so I was like very, very curious. I was like, "Oh, we have a Latino monk? I've never met one or even heard of one." And then she's like, "Oh yeah, also he has Instagram. Like you can follow him on Instagram." I was like, "All right, cool." So then I was pretty new to Instagram at the time too, so I followed you. And then I think the next chapter was COVID, when COVID hit, and I was teaching online, and then I invited you to be a guest speaker. Do you remember that?
Yes.
In the class, talking about meditation, and then you used the metaphor of carne asada to talk about meditation.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, and then from then on, I was more intrigued by Buddhism, and then you invited me to do meditation during COVID. So we had the early morning meditation classes with Alan Pito.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that was my first time kind of being a part of some kind of community, anything led by monastic. That's how I met Bhante. But I do want to ask you, I know you talk about this a lot, right? But how would you sum up your journey to become a monastic?
I mean, there's many different ways to tell the story, right? It seems to me like the past is always being rewritten because it's like informed by like new experiences. So maybe maybe like 5 years ago, I would have told you the story a certain way, right? If I'm not feeling too good today, I'm a little tired and sick, maybe I'll tell the story a certain way, right? If something very novel happened this morning and I'm very excited and passionate, the story is going to change, So there's many ways to tell the story, right? And I think they all share different kind of slices of the whole. So today I'll share a certain slice of the whole,
Okay.
And maybe if you've heard me, tell the story in another medium online, you'll be like, oh, it's a little different. It's always different, That's the one principle of Buddhism, that everything's in change.
Right.
There's no stability, So even our own stories, our narrative, our life history is dynamic and it's always changing. So I just put that out there, So people are like, I don't remember it that way, or maybe 10 years from now the story will be different. And so I just want to put it out there like that.
It's like watching a rock concert. You have the live performance, and it's always gonna be a little different. So we gotta get a little different slice today. So how did it start for you?
I think it started in just kind of like a very kind of like mundane way, for lack of a better word, like nothing to do with Buddhism, but my parents' kind of fascination or obsession with like Asian culture or something like that when I was a child. For some reason, they would always like going to especially old school Chinese restaurants in downtown LA. We lived in Koreatown. And my dad was obsessed with like bootleg movies, and stuff like kung fu movies and Chinese movies. So like there was always that kind of accessibility to a different culture, right? And when you're young, you're very curious. And this was like 80s, right? So like ninjas, samurai, Shaolin monks, like all of that's there. And then being in a community where like that's accessible to you, and also your parents like liking that culture too, right? And like liking those things too. So you can like lean into it more. So I think that set up kind of like the soil for me to feel like empowered to look at these certain things instead of just staying at the surface level. Because in those days, I mean, everyone loved Ninja Turtles. There wasn't a single person who didn't love Ninja Turtles, right? There wasn't a single person who didn't like ninjas or kung fu and karate, the Karate Kid, Sidekick, the movie, Three Ninjas. Like everyone was into that. But I felt that my parents' kind of like curiosity into Asian culture helped me like go past the veneer, you know, like really go into it and engage with it and ask questions. And I remember asking my dad, there's this key lore moment in my life. I must have been like 6 or 7 years old, and I was watching like this, again, bootleg kung fu movie with my father, and it was like those really cheesy ones where you can still see the strings and people are like walking on air and flying. Yeah. And I told my father, Dad, like, can I do that? And my dad said, you know, if you work hard, you can do anything. Can I do that? No one can do that. You know, that's a lie. But he didn't tell that to me. Like, he didn't shut me down. Yeah. And try to explain to me or be rational. He left it up to me, you know? And he just saw like here's a dream, and I can nourish his dream. Yeah. Right? It doesn't matter if it's realistic or not. Like, you know, most kids won't become doctors. Should we nurture their dream to become a doctor? Yes. Although we know most of them will not. You know, it's impossible even for everyone to become a doctor. Yeah. Right? If everyone in the world became a doctor, then there would be no lawyers, there would be no one to take out the trash, there would be no farmers, so it's not practical. But should we still encourage them if that's their dream? Yes, right? So my dad did that for me. So that then later allowed me, like when I was in high school and I had kind of more discipline and rigor and intelligence to actually like open up Buddhist books and start looking, and I felt like I could do it. I had permission to do that. Where like I saw for some of my other friends and family members who were Latinos, like being Latino looks a certain way, being Mexican looks a certain way. Our family has a certain culture, and you have to kind of like fit into that. Yeah. And I felt like very early my parents are like, it's all open to you. Yeah. And when I was a young teenager, my dad I don't know why he told me this. I must have been like 13. My dad sat me down one day, and my dad would just say random stuff all the time. He told me, you know what, Ricky? If you want to date any type of girl, you can do it. White, black, Asian, Latino girl, you can have whatever you want. And I was like, yo, like I'm watching cartoons. Like, what the hell is this? You know, like, why are you telling me this?
Just letting you know.
Just letting me know. I was like, okay, cool. You know, but so I'm really thankful to my parents. I think because of that openness they gave me, it set up the foundation for me to be able to explore things. And it just ends up it turns out that I ended up going into like Buddhism.
Yeah. But even before that, I mean, I got to go back to when I first really, really got to know you back in LA. And, you know, I had so many deep questions about Dharma. I was like really, really curious about the path at that time. And then it didn't take long after talking to you that I was like, there's something about Bhante. It feels really familiar, you know? And then I was like, oh, finding out that you're the same age as me. And, you know, actually we're like days apart in our birthdays. And I was like, Bhante really knows about like the Asian community from when I grew up. Because I grew up in, I guess people would call it the AZN period, where it was like the fix up cars and like, you know, just like the Asian American scene and identity and that whole community in Southern California at that time. And then I was like, wait, Bhante was in it.
Yeah, I was in it.
Right? So not only did like, you're talking about your dad giving you that permission, and then like, you know, it was all open to you. You ended up, even before Buddhism, really, really involved with the Asian community in like high school, right?
Yeah.
Like what was the nature of that? Like how were you involved?
I think we always tend to lean into things that are familiar. So actually the first like daycare or school that I went to was a Korean school. It was a Christian Korean school. I guess it was like the nicest one in the area of like Koreatown in downtown by 8th and Vermont. So my parents just put me in there. It turns out I was the only non-Korean in that school, right? At the time I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I think in my subconscious at some level, that's always like been familiar to me. So I've always leaned into that group, you know, like Asian faces have always just been like a Mexican face. It doesn't seem like it's some other culture or some other group, just
Yeah.
because of how like close I've always been. So I think when I was in high school, and there was just like I went to a performing arts high school, Hollywood High School, and it's just like such a dynamic environment.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of like Thais because of Thai Town. There was Koreans because of Koreatown down the street. And there was also a few Vietnamese. There wasn't very Vietnamese there, but the Vietnamese who were there were in the gang culture, and that's what my family knows. My family knows about gang culture, right? So like there was like a extra like a layer there that made it easier to lean into
Yeah.
the Vietnamese culture as it was at that time there in that place, which was very heavily influenced by gang culture. I mean, Korean culture was also,
Yeah.
but the Koreans kind of, I felt like it wasn't as dominant, you know,
Yeah.
as it was for like the Vietnamese culture. And the Vietnamese culture seemed like more humble, more hood, where the Koreans were playing more like the preppy business, kind
yeah.
of like a little bit different, more like East Coast Asians, a little kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Vietnamese were more like essays. They felt like homies at that time, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, at that time, led me into it. And then, like, you know, I ended up liking a Vietnamese girl. And she was my sister's homegirl,
Yeah.
you know? And my sister was not a gang member, but she hung out with all the homies,
Yeah.
you know? So, like, that kind of closeness with my sister, too. The gang life, sharing the same neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that got me into what you were talking about, you know? Like, going
Yeah.
to Alhambra,
Yeah.
San Gabriel Valley, all that stuff, you know, the car scene at that time,
Yeah.
the house party scene, like the long belts, the big pants,
Yep.
the spiky hair, like
And you dated an ABG Vietnamese girl.
Yeah, she was tatted too. She had like Vietnamese tatted on her. She had the panther on her back.
It doesn't get more ABG than that.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah.
first generation ABG too.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah.
OG ABG.
Yeah.
Wow. So then from that, you went to the Air Force,
Yeah.
right? And then after that transition, you got more curious about Buddhism. So how did that happen from Air Force to Buddhism?
So while I was dating that Vietnamese girl, we'd go into her house. Like the first time I went into her house, I was so scared. And there was Guan Yin, little altar there, you know? And I just felt like it made me feel very, you know, because I grew up Catholic. So it's like a big Jesus there. To me, I was like, oh, like I got to be cool, you know? Like I have that kind of reverence or fear.
Fear. Yeah.
Fear. So I started asking her about her, right? She told me a few things, and I started asking her about Buddhism. But, you know, she's like most Vietnamese people, or like most Catholics. They're just playing along with the program. Like, hey, man, I just put the food, I put the incense. I don't really know that much about Buddhism. Like,
Yeah.
go read a book. So I did that. I went to go read a book. I got a book by the Dalai Lama called The Joy of Living and Dying. And that's like what really got me into Buddhism. Like, when I read that book, it just connected with me. It resonated with me. And I'm like, this is what I've been looking for. Like, this is what I am. This is what I want to be.
Yeah.
This is how I want to live my life.
Yeah.
But I was a fool in high school, racing cars, doing drugs with a, you know, Vietnamese gangster girl. Like, I wasn't mature. I wasn't at that level yet, you know?
Yeah.
I wasn't mature enough to do that. So I went to the Air Force in part because I knew I wasn't ready to go to college. I knew I wasn't ready to just work and not have some sort of external control factor. I needed that. So I put myself in the Air Force to protect myself from falling into the gang and drug culture that most of my cousins and siblings fell into, that ended up getting shot, stabbed, or in prison. Some of my friends killed. I needed to get away from that. So the Air Force was my ticket to get out of that.
Yeah.
Right? And the Air Force taught me like discipline. It educated me. And more than anything, in the Air Force, most of my friends were already in college or had graduated. So I felt like, man, like I need to get my stuff together too. So I started studying and reevaluating my life. And in that process, maybe like after 6 years of being in the Air Force, I started going back to Buddhism and reading about it and going online and watching YouTube in the beginning, you know, when, and there was a few videos on Buddhism. So it took some time to get there because the first couple of years in the Air Force was just like basically like being in college, like frat parties, getting drunk all the time, partying in Tokyo, partying in Hawaii, partying in Korea, like, you know, everywhere we went, we were partying, you know, all the time, getting drunk. And so it took time to kind of just like let that settle down. Like, okay, I've done all of that. Now what? What's next? And then automatically the voice in my head was like, oh, dharma, like dhamma, Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
You've always wanted that. You've always been around it, and now's the time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think that's how I started like heading into like a real formal practice instead of just kind of being like what I sometimes call like a book Buddhist,
Mm-hmm.
where you just read Buddhism. Oh, this is nice. I like this. And then you throw a few sayings at parties, right? Oh, the Buddha said this. Oh, the Buddha said that.
Mm-hmm.
But you've never really been to a temple,
Yeah.
right? You've never really taken refuge,
Yeah.
right? Or you're not even like friends with like traditional Buddhists.
Yep.
It's just like reading Spider-Man or something, you know? It's just like a hobby that you have on the side.
Yeah.
So I think from high school until like I was like 27, it was just like a hobby or a fantasy of mine, something that I had romantic ideas about, like the kung fu movies.
Yeah.
And then at that time, when I was like 27, it's like, oh no, like I gotta be about it.
Mhm.
Like I actually gotta try this out instead of just fantasizing about
Yeah.
it.
You do a lot of other work as well. Can you let us know a little bit about like some of the other degrees and certificates and other things you got going on besides being a monastic?
Yeah. So to be very honest, when I became a monk, it was really kind of for like selfish reasons, you know, because I wanted to become enlightened, or I wanted to get away from suffering. It was really mostly about me. But you know, when you're a monk or a priest, or you're put in some position of like authority, I guess, you know, people come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I started listening to people and sitting with people and being with people when they're sick, when they're getting old, when they're dying, when they lose their loved ones, when they don't get accepted to the university when they get dumped, when they get cheated on. And so then my practice completely shifted.
Mm-hmm.
It started becoming about other people, like how can I serve them,
Yeah.
right? And I saw that like actually by developing the skills that I would need in order to serve them, I would also be like enriching myself at the same time. It's like a win-win situation, right?
Yeah.
And it's more motivating, at least for me, to work for others than to work for myself. Because for myself, I can make excuses like, oh, I'm tired, I'll do it tomorrow, whatever, it's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But for other people, there's a sense of urgency. Like other people can't wait. Like other people's lives are not on hold, you know? Like they need the help now.
Yeah.
So that got me into like researching into like counseling, psychology, chaplaincy.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went ahead and enrolled in Masters of Science in Counseling Psychology with the emphasis on doing therapy in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a certificate in Spanish therapy. I also got 2 certifications in like mindfulness-based interventions.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I finished that, I went straight into a Buddhist chaplaincy program. It was 2 years.
Yeah.
So to kind of work with more like end of care or
Mhm.
like, just like crisis situations and how to apply Buddhist counseling there. And then right now I'm in a Master's of Arts in Buddhist Counseling from Sri Lanka, which is more academic and more kind of like theological than like Western secular kind of psychology. And all of this is also informed by my teacher, Bhante Puniji, who was really put a lot of emphasis on Buddhist psychology, and even at times said like, no, Buddhism is psychology.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or at least the basis of it is psychology. And then from there we get everything else like culture, religion, arts. But the true basis is psychology in the sense of like working with the mind.
Yeah.
So I think all these things came into a confluence, and then that led me to like now doing like online Buddhist chaplaincy, like deep listening sessions.
Yeah.
Where people can just sign up online, and I just like give them the space to do whatever they want in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm not there to fix them or to heal them or to provide anything, but just a neutral space, a safe space where someone can express themselves. And I've been doing that for almost like 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been, I think there's like 300 hours now of that going on.
Yeah.
And then a lot of just like meeting people on the fly and doing, even here, like counseling on the fly, marriage counseling here in Vietnam, which I didn't expect, you know? I just kind of like, here's my wife, help us out, you know? And a lot on the go. You know, sometimes I've been walking here like down the street and people just come up to me saying hi, and they end up like sharing all their pain and suffering and their problems with me.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like a language barrier.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you just gotta, there's something beyond language.
Yeah.
There's something even beyond like bodily communication.
Yeah.
About how we pay attention. People can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not about like these micro kind of like little movements in the faces or in the body that are signals for empathy or compassion or fear, But there's another element about just being fully present that makes people feel really nourished and safe. And I think that actually does a lot of the heavy lifting for most of the things that I do. Like, I don't feel like I'm a technical expert in any kind of technique that I've studied, even though I have all these certificates. I don't think that I'm doing therapy with people, but I think what I really try to do is, like, I'm here.
Yeah, genuine, deep listening.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about you're here in
Yeah.
Vietnam.
I am here
in Vietnam right now. So for me, I think about this all the time. Like, how did this happen? How did I end up in Vietnam, born in the U.S.? My parents, refugees from Vietnam, raised me, reminded me to be Vietnamese and teach me the culture. But I was very American, like eating my breakfast cereal, watching my cartoons, almost like sometimes feeling a little embarrassed about being Vietnamese. My parents never imagined me living in Vietnam. And I always go back to, like, what is it? And then I go back to that word in Vietnamese, Yuen, which is, like, I guess Vietnamese people call fate. Yeah. And it's just some kind of combination of things. I'm very Buddhist about it. To me, it's like causes and conditions. Yes. The conditions were set, maybe even in the period before I was born for this to happen. Somehow this led me here, right? Everything about me, everything about my life and my parents' life and everything somehow brought me here. And so it's very deep for me. And here you are too. So I'm wondering, like, do you ever think about what has drawn you to Vietnam? Because you are drawn to Vietnam, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't choose to come to Vietnam, to be very honest. I was invited by our friend Jackie.
That's right. Yeah.
So Jackie had her engagement ceremony, I believe. There's so many steps in the Vietnamese wedding process. I forget which one of the steps it is. It's one of the many.
Yeah, it's very intricate.
Yeah, it's like they had the tea ceremony back in LA with the dragon dancing, and then there was another ceremony that was going to happen here, or maybe the same one, but just for the family here. Yeah. So I came here at that time by invitation. Before that, I had no, like, aspiration to come to Vietnam. It was just by chance. Yeah. But also by chance you were here, right? At the same time. So then when I came here that time, it just felt very familiar. It felt very homey. I felt like I was in Mexico, Yeah. It felt very much like Mexico. And so it's that, like, in je ne sais quoi, right? Like, I don't know what it is, but there's something there. Yeah. That just made me feel comfortable. So then when I had a chance to come a second time, the last time I came for 3 months, there's where I had an intention. And the intention was, one, it feels like home, but different. Yeah. But that different part also feels like home because Mexico is not Buddhist. Here, I get the homey feeling of, like, Buddhism. Yeah. Plus a similar culture as Mexico, Yeah, so it kind of has that extra element. Because if I'm a monastic in the U.S. or anywhere in the West outside of Asia, it's a very different experience being a Buddhist monk outside of a Buddhist country than in a Buddhist country or Buddhist culture. Yeah. You can't replicate that. Yeah. There's a sense of belonging, a sense of, like, mutual understanding. Yeah. A sense of coming home. Right. Right? Like, here's where it all came from. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Like, Buddhism is an Asian idea, invention. Right? Culture. Yeah. These Asian people were the custodians for thousands of years of Buddhism. Yeah. They're the ones who preserved it. If it wasn't for Asian people, I would have never had Buddhism, They took care of it for thousands of years despite multiple invasions, multiple famines, destruction, civilizations lost. Yeah. Like, somehow they managed to preserve this treasure. Yeah. And you feel it once you're here. Yeah. You see how it was done, and that's something that cannot be replicated and something that it just really touches your heart, Yeah. So then I get that also by being here. So that I think that's spiritual connection of Buddhism here. Yeah. And also how familiar Vietnam is to Mexico, makes it very comfortable. Although there's parts, to be honest, that are unfamiliar because it's so different from America. Right. From the US. Yeah. Like, it's hard to find connections between, like, white Protestant North American culture and Vietnam. Right. Like, you have to struggle to find connections. Yeah. But with, like, Mexican culture, especially from, like, Mexico City and like Ho Chi Minh City, I mean, it's pretty easy. You don't have to try too hard to find a connection, you know?
That's so cool. Because usually I hear a lot of overseas Vietnamese come back here and they say the exact same thing. It's different, but it's familiar. But then to hear it from you comparing it to Mexico and Mexican culture, that's amazing. Because that's like it's not Vietnamese culture. And yet there are things that are overlapping. And we talk about this a lot. The similarities between Vietnamese culture and Mexican culture. There's so many things. Family, late night partying, singing, right? It's just like the food, the festive vibes. Like there's so many similarities. But knowing you also as a monastic, I want to go back to this too. You have this, I don't know how to describe it, almost like a mission or like a way that you practice where you understand this kind of intersection of Western Buddhism and Asian Buddhism. Like I knew more about this from you, where there is something called quote unquote Western Buddhism, and then there's Asian Buddhism, which, like you said, has this lineage of thousands and thousands of years practiced by people in Asia, and there's something going on right between the two worlds right now. Can you give us a little context on like what that looks like?
I mean, the first thing we need to recognize is that there's many Buddhisms, right? Like right now in the world, there's many forms of Buddhisms, and those forms of Buddhisms are always changing too. Right? They're not stagnant. So what Vietnamese Buddhism is now is not the same as 100 years ago. It's different, very different, you know? Buddhism even 50 years ago in the United States is very different from Buddhism now, right? So the best I can do is describe like a snapshot, you know, of like right now at this moment, kind of what's going on and what's led us to the point that we're at right now. So in the West, you know, Buddhism is approached in many ways. I think the most obvious one is self-care. Buddhist ideas, right? Buddhist practices is seen as self-care, and that's why we hear about like Buddhism as a way of life or Buddhism as a philosophy, right?
Not a religion.
Yeah, it becomes something like CrossFit or yoga, or something like that, right? Like more than a hobby, but not really like an ethnic identity or placing yourself in something, in some kind of like a cosmological perspective where it's like, you know, universal. It's something bigger than just your own life. It's you're like something built into the fabric of reality. So there's that kind of like self-care Buddhism.
Optimizing yourself, feeling better,
becoming a better person. Then there's another one, which is a little bit older, which is, I think, really how Buddhism got started in the West, which is academic Buddhism. So when all the Europeans first came to Asia, right, you had all these linguists, historians, archaeologists who started, you know, trying to see what is this thing that people are doing in Asia, right? I think that was like the first flavor of Western Buddhism. So then they presented Buddhism in a very kind of intellectual way to the West. And there's another, here's where like kind of what lends to this idea of like Buddhism as a philosophy. Not as a way of life, but Buddhism as literally as a philosophy, right? That's a perspective, a way to analyze things in the world, right? A way to make judgments. That very much comes from the academic part. So I think these are like the two main currents in the West. One is like self-care Buddhism that you see in magazines, online, like 10 tips to be more mindful.
Mindful
10 tips,
everything.
10 tips to be more compassionate, right? How should you place a Buddha statue here, you know, and things like that. Then there's the academic one, right? Which is kind of very critical of Buddhism, right? And tries to kind of separate the ideal kind of the principles and fundamentals that the Buddha shared in the earliest texts, separate that from Buddhist culture. Right? So like Buddhist culture is another study, like people living Buddhism, practicing Buddhism, that's one thing. And then there's like what the oldest texts say, you know, about Buddhism, or what the like oldest Tibetan texts or certain teachers say, but they're separated from living Buddhism, right? So I think that's like the other mainstream of American Buddhism. But there's also like actual Buddhist true communities. Like there's true Zen Western communities of mostly non-Asian people who are practicing,
Yeah.
very devoutly and very authentically Buddhism, but it's still not at the same level as it is in Asia, right? It's not tied to like ethnicity. It's not tied to like a certain place, area, a community. It's not like multi-generational, right? It's still like first or maybe second generation. So it doesn't have that kind of societal dimension to it yet. It's just like, okay, we all come together, we practice at the temple, and we're a community in the sense that like maybe you form a guitar club and you all come together, right? And you appreciate playing the guitar. Yeah. And I mean, you could really go into it deeply, but it's not the same as, like going to Cambodia and going to a village where for many generations people have been practicing like that Cambodian banjo. It's kind of like that's a different thing going on there. Yeah. Than like a group of people in the West getting together to practice guitar, even if it's been for like 20 or 40 years. Yeah. It's very different because it's like individuals coming together to form a community, and the other one is like something more. It's more than just blood. It's more than just family. There's something more that's there, an unspoken level. And I think I said it earlier, and I keep saying it again. There's something more, right? Yeah. There's always something more that we can't point out to, and that's not there in the West yet. In Asian Buddhism, it's all about tradition, actually. Yeah. It's all about family, actually. Buddhism is surrender. It's focused on family and focused on community or the neighborhood, right? Yeah. Like that is the axle, that is the core of Buddhism. And at times, the actual literal teachings of the Buddha have to be bent or modified to fit the needs of the family or the community, right? Yeah. Where in the West, I feel it's like, no. Like we have to strictly follow the principles and the fundamentals of the Buddha, even if we have to disregard family and community and country or tradition, So I feel like these are the kind of two kind of dichotomies that we're stuck in, right? Like, I mean, there's nuances. I think that there's people now more in Asia, especially a younger generation, who are kind of practicing more Buddhism like they are in the West. And I think there's actually homegrown Buddhists in the United States who are probably practicing more like Buddhist in Asia. Yeah. But I'm just talking in general, right? Yeah. Like if you were to look at the most popular Buddhist magazines in the United States, if you were to look at what gets shared more on the news and social media and what's more popular in the United States, and if you were to ask Buddhists in the United States if they're Buddhist, most of them would tend towards a more kind of secular, academic, self-care than like family-centered, culturally centered form of Buddhism.
They're not going to the local Asian temple.
No, maybe one person, one of them only. There's always one, and he's usually married to the Asian Buddhist. Yeah.
So is there anything that you would like to see going forward in the way that Western Buddhism interacts with Asian Buddhism?
Yeah. So in the West, there's, there's always been a sense, at least in the last couple hundred years, of a sense of superiority. And that has also gone into Buddhism, right? So usually the way it plays out is that a Westerner wants to learn about Buddhism. He reads what the Buddha taught. He looks at Asian people. He sees that they're not living 100% to what the Buddha taught. Therefore, it's like corrupted. It's not real. It's not pure, right? I'm going to follow according to what the Buddha said. So then, actually, I'm more of a Buddhist than they are. Because I'm like living by the letter, Yeah. But what that person doesn't realize is that these people had to make these changes, or Buddhism looks like that, because of the environmental cause and conditions that have been happening around them, right? So they also believe in these principles, but there's been wars, there's been famines, there's been invasions, there's all these things that are happening, and those principles kind of have to give a little leeway when they confront these kind of all these things going around them. But the person in the West, they're in a more privileged position, right? They're in their ivory tower, where they don't have to worry about racism, they don't have to worry about wars, they don't have to worry about famine, they don't have to worry about ethnic fights. Yeah. So they can kind of practice Buddhism in a very kind of idealistic way, which in many senses is more closer to the authentic teachings. I won't deny that. But the problem comes is when they make a judgment about Asian culture. You know, like they're not following the real Buddhist teachings. Well, that's because like they had to deal with a lot of things. Like they're not only doing Buddhism like you. You have enough money, enough resources, enough luxuries for you to practice Buddhism as a luxury at your convenience. And people in Asia don't have that luxury. They got to survive first. They have to eat, you know, like they got to have a house. They got to take care of their children. And if they can, they practice Buddhism. Right? So like, I think there is a weight to the critique of people who come into Buddhism and look at the ideals and say, oh, Asian people are not 100% following the ideals. That is true, but that doesn't mean that they're not doing real Buddhism. They are doing real Buddhism. And their Buddhism is real is because they had to work, they had to somehow try to find a way to preserve these principles in the face of all these adversities, right? So that makes it messy. So they're not able to keep it 100% clean, right? Like we have the 5 precepts. Can everyone keep the 5 precepts perfectly? No. Like it's very hard to find a person, you know, that can keep the 5 precepts perfectly unless you're rich and you can like have a cabin and people bring you food and you don't have to do anything because you have so much money. You outsource breaking the precepts to somebody else, right? But people who don't have that luxury and who try to follow the 5 precepts in their everyday life, they're going to fall into these situations where like they can't really. It's difficult, right? Or they'd have to make a sacrifice in some other way. And there's where then like to the outsider, it looks like they're not really practicing Buddhism, right? But that's only because the environment doesn't let them, right? If they were just as privileged or fortunate as you, they would also try to follow Buddhism according to the ideals, but they don't have that privilege.
To go back to Buddhism in Vietnam, or maybe even just spirituality in Vietnam in general, I kind of see this kind of, I guess we can say leniency, this kind of like ease where there's so many temples here, but it's not like the monks are going around like pointing at people like, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. It's like, it's not forcing anyone to change, right? And I think maybe the West has this thing in Western culture where you got to fix everything. You know, this is broken. We need to fix it now. That's wrong. This is the right way. And here it's like, that's all really gray. Like, it's not like, let's just go around and like say everything's corrupted and bad and like, let's fix it right away. The temple is always there. And it's surrounded by all this, like, you know, in Saigon, especially like chaos, right? It's just like honking and yelling and all this stuff. But the temple's always there. And when you step in, there's like this peace. So when you're ready to find it, it's there for you. And it's so interesting right now in this like time in Vietnam where a lot of globalization and like you mentioned, a lot of young people now maybe getting enticed by Western Buddhism too. And for me, it's so fascinating because you have like the new Western Buddhism and all these like self-care ideas. And then at the same time, you have that current of old Buddhism here at the same time, right? So it makes Vietnam really unique. Like what have you noticed about Vietnamese Buddhism or like how Vietnamese practice it here?
It's probably the most eclectic version of Buddhism that I've seen in any country. It's just like a little bit of this, a little bit of this. You know, everyone's like, yeah, it's so vibrant, it's so dynamic. Even I was talking to Bhikkhu Bodhi yesterday, and he also had the same insight. Like he noticed the same thing here too. You know, when you're like Bhikkhu Bodhi lived like 20 years in Sri Lanka, very like Orthodox Theravada Buddhism, right? I've been to Cambodia, also like a very form of Orthodox Buddhism. Every country is kind of like, they have a certain way of doing it, but it seems like Vietnamese people don't really care about how it's done. As long as it functions, you know, like, does it work? It works. Okay, that's cool. Is it perfect? It doesn't need to be, come on, like, we don't have to put that much effort into it, right? As long as it's working. And I think that's beautiful because here, you know, there's something that people point out about the West, that in the West, we have the potential with Buddhism to create like a special Buddhism, because in the West, we had like Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana, and Mongolia and Bhutan, Vajrayana Buddhism. We had Mahayana Buddhism, which is East Asian, the northern tradition. We had Theravada Buddhism, that something new can come up, right? Something beautiful. And we're thinking about the future of Buddhism. How will it look in the West? I think it's already here, but it's in Vietnam. Whatever we think it's going to look like in the West, it has already arrived, but it's in Vietnam. Because here, you go to a Pure Land Vietnamese Mahayana temple, and you'll see that there's already Theravada aspects incorporated. The first thing you walk in, Arahant Sivali. Oh, what the hell? Arahant Sivali's right here chilling. Yeah. And then you'll see like some like Tibetan Bodhisattva, or you might even see that in a few weeks they have like a Tibetan monk coming from Nepal, from Vajrayana, right?
Yeah.
So it's a Mahayana school, but they have Vajrayana teachings and Theravada teachings, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see a Pure Land school. There'll be a Vajrayana school, and then there's like a Theravada temple over here. Like, it's all like one thing.
Yeah.
And everyone's sharing ideas.
Yeah.
And it's so open. And there isn't this division that we have in the West where it's like convert Buddhists go to the convert, right? Or whatever, North American Buddhists go to their temples and the Asians go to theirs, right? Here, like, there's all the temples are in communication. They're all talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
You know, even though like some people might say, well, it's Vietnam, it's all the same culture, it's all Vietnamese people. If you know Vietnam, you know that it's not one culture, it's not homogenous, right?
It's not
homogenous. It's a multicultural country, right?
Exactly.
Despite that, there's all this communication between all these different temples.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like seeing what can happen in Europe and in North America.
All right, so we just realized that I need like 5 hours to talk to Bhante. So we hope to have you back someday, Bhante, definitely to talk about more of these topics. Super fascinating. I want to say thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all your insights. Thank you, Bhante.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I look forward to being here again, and I will be coming back to Vietnam next year. So
yes. All right.